Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Tag Tuesday, a venerable tradition on BookTube where everybody swaps tags, except me, because nobody likes me, because I smell. So I don't think I was tagged in anything today. But I wanted to do a tag anyway. I want to give more attention to these staples of BookTube, so I found a tag that's making the rounds that I like. It's called the Second Tome Around Book Tag. It was created by the Hungry Bookworm, and I'll leave a link to her original video down below. And it's all about secondhand books. And so it's the exact kind of nosy thing that I would ask you over wine anyway if we were face to face. I would ask you, I think a lot of people on BookTube, I'd be willing to bet most people have a huge history with secondhand books and probably buy mostly secondhand books. Certainly there were huge periods in my own life when I did. Questions flesh this all out, and they're great. Question number one is, do you buy secondhand books? And I do. If we stretch the meaning of buy, when I'm out and about, when I'm like, for instance, up in Vermont with the Bean, visiting the old farmhouse, when we go out and about, then I will buy secondhand books, and it feels a little weird to hand over money for goods and services because ordinarily what I'm doing with used books is using store credit. Here in Boston, what I'm ordinarily doing is using store credit. I have a huge amount of store credit, usually going in every place where I would need it, especially the Brattle Bookshop, the great used bookstore in downtown Boston, where I've been a loyal and annoying customer there for many, many, many decades. And people, especially people here on BookTube, you are been incredibly generous calling in store credit for me. There's that, and there's also that there's a constant supply of recycling books to them. But buy, yes, if I want to, I will buy used books. I do it all the time, and like I said, there have been periods in my life where I didn't have any truck with the new book world. The new book world currently commands most of my attention, but there were times in my life when that wasn't true at all. Long periods of time where the used bookstores were it for me. So yes, I do. Question number two is, what is or was your latest purchase? We just saw it recently. This is one of them. I got a stack of books from the Brattle Bookshop, and this was one of them. The Selected Stories of Mavis Gallant, in what I suspect is a Canadian trade paperback that changed the design of the cover just a bit, made it a paperback, and also changed the title. I think that the exact 900-page volume in America was the Collected Stories of Mavis Gallant, not Selected. But one way or another, I had the American hardcover of this for a long time, and I sent it to one of you. I sent it out to somebody, so I didn't have it. I had a gap, and it's an epic short story collection. It's something if you like short stories, and I do, I very much like short stories, then you kind of need to have it. And I found it not only did I find it in a paperback, which is always great and always a bonus, but I also found it in this intriguing new edition, a new to me edition. So that's my latest purchase, one of them. It was also one of 3 chunksters, 800 pages or more, that I got that same day. Today, that being much earlier today, feels like a different day. Question number 3 is, what condition do you find acceptable, i.e. tatty or non-tatty? And for me, the crossing line, the determining line, is whether or not I can salvage the book. It can be in the worst shape in the world, but if I see it and think that I can salvage it, I do a whole bunch of amateur salvaging of books, and I have forever and ever. They horrify book collectors because they destroy the resale property of the book, but I don't ever do it to books where I care about that. I do it to books I plan on keeping forever. And that involves just clear plastic packing tape and a pair of scissors. And it can make a book, I can reclaim a book to a great degree of damage. I can find something that I pull off a used bookstore shelf that looks horrible, and when I'm done with it, you wouldn't think it was the same book. You could show them side by side, before and after, and you really wouldn't. So, because I've been doing it for a long time, and I know what I want them to look like. I want them to be able to take the traffic that I'm going to give them, pulling them on and off the shelf. So I only do it with books I think I'm going to use and keep. But that's the dividing line for me. If I find something like a mass market paperback where the cover is coming all the way off, or a mass market or a trade paperback where the spine has popped off from the pages and is just loose, if I see something like that where I know there's nothing I can do about it, then I don't get it, even if I really want it. even if I really want it. Also, if something is manically underlined without any reason, or that totally obnoxious neon yellow highlighting that students do, something like that, you can't fix, and you can't ignore it when you're reading it. So something like that, I would put it back, even if it were something that I really wanted. That has happened to me many times. Like, for instance, the Norton Critical Edition Library does a great edition of Les Marques d'Arthur by Mallory. A fantastic edition, the edition of Mallory to have. And the one time that I've seen it at a used bookstore was at the Book Barn in Niantic, Connecticut. I grabbed it off the shelf and thought, oh, find of the day. And then I looked at it. And it was full of neon yellow highlighting. I had to put it back. Oh, that was painful. I still remember it. That was painful. Let's see here. Question number 4 is, after you have read said book, do you keep it for a reread or do you redonate it? My goal, of course, is to get at used bookstores only the things that I will keep forever. Keep to reread, keep to love, keep to consult. That is 70% of the time not true. You always hope that, but 70% of the time I end up redonating it, reselling it, giving it to somebody. There's a huge throughput of traffic in my personal library. Huge. It slows down a lot in this room. This room is like the forest of Lothlorien, where time slows down. In this room, it slows down a lot. The books that make it into this room tend to stay here for a lot longer than the ones that don't. The ones in the other rooms, I do my best. I do my best, but especially if I'm going someplace, like a friend of mine runs a church here in Boston and regularly assembles books for a charity sale, hundreds and hundreds, sometimes thousands of books, and he doesn't charge me for them, or if I'm dealing with store credit at the Brattle or somewhere else. When it's something like that where the book isn't costing me anything, in situations like that, I might relax that stricture and just get something out of curiosity, and 9 times out of 10 that turns out not to be anything that I'm going to want to keep. It might have been interesting to read, but it's not anything I want to add to my shelves, so those get cycled through as well. So I would say that do you ever? This question calls naturally for a percentage. I would say probably 70% of the books that I take in used, I also get rid of used. That I also get rid of. That, I think I have about that percentage of overturn, which is pretty, I know it sounds terrible, but it's pretty good. 30% I'm keeping forever, for the rest of my life. That's maybe that's not good. Maybe I'm fooling myself. Question number 5 is, do you have a favorite place you like to go when looking for secondhand books? As a matter of fact, I do. Here in Boston, it's the Brattle Bookshop in downtown Boston. It's a great used bookstore that I can't recommend it strongly enough. If you're a bookish person and you come to Boston, it should take pride of place over Fenway Park. It should be the first thing you come and look at. Although, be prepared to ship books home to yourself. There's actually a post office right around the corner from the Brattle. The Chinatown post office is very close. I've often advised people, well, you don't want to lug all the books that you have just accumulated. Let's just walk around the corner and mail these to you. You'll get them in the mail. So not only we get the pleasure of hunting for books at the Brattle, but you also get the pleasure of getting books in the mail. But don't bother with lugging them all the way back to Oklahoma when you're on the plane or anything like that. But I have had a favorite haunt everywhere that I've gone. Everywhere that I've lived, when I've been looking for books, a lot of times I've lived in places where I wasn't interested in reading new books at all. And by new, I mean new to me, new in my collection. I had my traveling companion books, and that's all I wanted. But when I've put down roots in a place and stayed for a while, then I have hunted out where the good places are to get books. But right now, it's the Brattle, hands down. There are a couple of places to go. I live in an outer borough of Greater Boston, still Boston. If you put it, you address a letter to me and just say Boston, Massachusetts, it will get there. But the town, the specific district of Boston, the place in Boston, the neighborhood where I live, has a couple of used bookstores that are fairly good. I have very seldom gone there and come out empty-handed, but nothing compares to the Brattle. Nothing compares to the Brattle as far as I know anywhere. The closest that I know of would be the Strand in New York City and Powell's. And in both cases, both the Strand in New York and Powell's have gone commercial and shallow. They're still great bookstores, but they've made some concessions to the modern world that the Brattle has not made. And I like that. I like that very much when it comes to the Brattle. It's still the same experience that it was 40 years ago. Uh, let's see here. Number 6 is hardback or paperback. Do you have a preference? As you can tell from this Mavis Gallant volume, I really don't. It depends on condition. It depends on rereadability. I'm hard on my books, so hardcover is often the better choice, especially if the book is really big, because I'm going to tear it apart otherwise. Like, for instance, I just recently got, I think it's out of reach, I just recently got The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shirer in a big, really nice trade paperback, big, dark, ominous black and gold trade paperback. And I was reading it. I read it. I went into it just for The Conquest of Poland as a reread. This time around, I will read the whole book at some point or other. I reread it many times. I love it. I need it in my library. But then I was reading The Conquest of Poland, and then I thought some detail in that made me think, okay, I want to read his account of the Battle of the Bulge again, which is right at the end of the book. And in both cases, I had 5 pounds of paperback hanging off of one sliver that remained, either at the front or at the back. And it made me wary for the integrity of the book. It made me think, once again, it made me think, well, maybe I do need a hardcover of this thing, because hardcovers are heavier and they're more unwieldy. They're harder on the hands and on the belly when you're reading in bed. But they're not going to, the weight of the pages is not going to pull the thing apart. Whereas, for instance, in a big trade paperback of The Recognitions by William Gaddis, or Mason and Dixon by Thomas Pynchon, or The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, or even this Mavis Gallant book, you spend too much time too close to one of the edges and you start to worry the whole thing's going to rip apart. So it's a constant calculus. If I think that the book can sustain strenuous reading as a paperback, I would much prefer a paperback. But I'll get a hardcover if it wouldn't do that. Like, for instance, this thing I just got at the Brattle Bookshop. This is The Letters of Kingsley Amis. This was made into a trade paperback in the UK. I don't think it ever had a paperback in America. But this is 1,200 pages long. I doubt I would get this in a trade paperback. I really doubt that I would. It would have to be really well made. I don't think it would be worth it otherwise. Question number 7 is, have you found any real gems? Yes, I have. I've shown quite a few of them on this channel. But there's one that I can't resist showing again. And this was at a Goodwill shop here in Massachusetts years and years ago. I wonder if I have the exact date when I found this. 2009. 2009, I found this thing. There was a series. Once upon a time, Star Trek had 4 television series going at the same time. There was, or almost going very close to each other. And you had the original. So you had the original Star Trek. You had Star Trek The Next Generation. You had Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager, both of which were going on at the same time. And in addition to that, you also have Captain Hikaru Sulu from the Star Trek movies. He commands the Excelsior with a crew of his own, a distinctive-looking crew of his own. And you also have Captain Pike from one 2-part episode of the original Star Trek, who had a crew. It was the Starship Enterprise, but he had a crew of his own, Dr. Piper, number 1, Lieutenant Spock. And Diane Carey, the Star Trek writer, came up with an idea of a place called the Captain's Table, a restaurant that serves only captains. Not necessarily Starfleet captains, anyone who's ever been a captain, even in fiction. It's a quasi-mysterious place. Only captains are allowed in. Only captains are allowed to sit. And all captains are expected to tell tales, sometimes tall tales. And Diane Carey, it's a great idea. The idea is that that the Captain's Table is quasi-urban myth, which is why Captain Janeway can encounter it in the Delta Quadrant, thousands and thousands of light years from Starfleet, and she does. And each one of these captains tells their own story. There's one for Captain Pike, there's one for Captain Sulu, there's one for Kirk, there's one for Picard, there's one for Benjamin Sisko, who becomes a captain. He doesn't start out that way in Deep Space Nine, but he becomes one. And Captain Janeway. And they each had their own novels. And they had a blazing thing over at the captain's table, so you could collect them all. And in addition to all of those, there was one other captain, Peter David, the fan favorite writer, Peter David, came up with a starship captain of his own, Captain Calhoun. And he gave Captain Calhoun basically the X-Men as his command crew, One was a super genius, one was a weird Vulcan, one was an alien who was invulnerable to phaser fire. They each had superpowers. It was kind of ridiculous. It was an exaggerated play on the standout personalities of the original Starship Enterprise crew, each one of whom. But those characters were earned. They weren't features of biology. But it didn't matter. Peter David was given the green light to go ahead with Captain Calhoun. They did a whole bunch of little novels, a whole bunch of big novels. And so Peter David was invited to be part of the captain's table with Captain Calhoun, telling his own story. And when they were done with all of that, they, unbeknownst to me, I didn't see this in bookstores, they came out with one big volume called The Captain's Table. And there you have, there's Captain Kirk and Captain Sulu. There's Captain Picard and Sisko and Janeway. And then on the back, you have Captain Pike in his original uniform, and Captain Calhoun. And they're all at the captain's table, and this is just a collection of those individual novels. And when I saw it at this Goodwill for like $1, I think it might have even been 25 cents, I thought, oh, great, fantastic. I've only read a few of these. The Voyager novel is by far the best. Oh, man, the Fire Ships is what it's called. It's incredible, an incredible journey of a novel, where Captain Janeway thinks that she is separated permanently from her crew and joins the crew of another starship, an alien starship. Works her way up, gets to know its way, gets to know its customs, gets to know its rank and its command structure, and pledges her loyalty. She takes an oath to serve on that vessel. And at the very end of the novel, it turns out that Voyager is still around. They find her. They've been looking for her all along. And they say, well, right, we found you. That's that. And she says, no. No, I'm glad you're all alive, but I swore a loyalty to my current captain and crew. I can no more abandon them than I could abandon you. It's just amazing. Just the kind of thing that Diane Carey would think of. But, so I got this volume, and I thought, that's great. I'll read all the ones I haven't read. I'll reread the ones I have. They're all in one handy volume. And then I started looking through it. The thing that makes this a gem. I started looking through it and realized that the person who had this before me was a very picky reader. I want to find you an exhibit. Yes. I showed this on my channel once before, those of you who watched endlessly. Is a very picky reader. This person, the person who had this book before me, censored every expletive. Curse you, blast you, God damn it, anything like that is censored all throughout the book. It's not just one story. It's all throughout the book. Whenever anything like that appears, even if it's the one and only example in hundreds of pages, there it will be gone. And I'm reading along and I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't need those things to enjoy the stories, but boy, oh boy, is that a window into the psychology of the person who owned this book before me. And then I got to the coup de grace, the pièce de résistance. When this person got to the Captain Calhoun story, Captain Calhoun is not continuity, of course. He's never had a TV show nor appeared in one. When this person got to the Captain Calhoun story in this combination of the Captain's Table, they cut it out of the book. I don't know if you can make that out. They cut out the whole novel. They cut out the whole part of it from the book. Just carved it right out of the book. So that it's not in here at all. This is not don't even bother excising and censoring the expletives. Get rid of it completely because it's not real. So I would count this as a gem. I want to get rid of it now for all the mud in Egypt. But anyway, so I have a couple of others like that. Mostly the example would be Spirited Marginalia. That usually makes a book a keeper for me. If I'm lucky enough to encounter Spirited Marginalia, where the previous reader has fought with the book the whole time and is eloquent and read and legible. But in this case, this book was owned by a full-blown nut job before I got to it, so that was great. Then let's see here. Question number 8 is optional. Find a book from your shelves that you can donate to a good cause or your local charity or Goodwills. The one thing that's not there is to resell it. You have to donate it to a good cause. So, but I do that anyway. I recycle a lot of books to the Brattle Bookshop, of course, for store credit. But the friend that I mentioned who runs a charity shop, he runs a church here in Boston, and he has a charity sale that's a regular event. I recycle a lot of books to him as well. Quite a few of them make it into his own personal collection, but quite a few don't. Quite a few make it there. So I don't know what it will be. it'd be some hardcover that I'm done with that I think would be suitable for his parishioners. There's plenty of those. I got plenty of books in the mail. And then question number 9 is go ahead and tag some peeps. And I saw Brian at Bookish do this tag, and he said he has no idea who shops for used books. I think that's everybody on BookTube. I don't think that's... But he also said he has no idea who's done the tag, and I don't either. I don't have any idea. Pretty sure I've never seen this on Mark Richardson's channel, Richardson Reads. I think that somebody along the line tagged Jason at Byways and Bookland, but if no one has tagged Sean Standfast, I do. Any of these people that I know regularly haunt used bookstores, if you regularly do traffic in used books, then you should do this tag if you haven't already. I find it fascinating that just the timing of it, because there've been times in the last I've been back into reviewing books for almost 15 years, and before that there was a long period where I was selling books, but I was only buying used books and I wasn't reviewing anything. And then before that there was a long period where I was reviewing books. And in the period where you're reviewing books, if you're a prolific reviewer such as I am, you get bombarded in new releases. And there have been times in the last 15 years where my used book venturing went to almost nothing because the new books coming in the door were satisfying all my reading needs. Right at the moment, that is not true. I've been visiting the Brattle quite a bit in 2020. I'd like to keep it up. I love it. So maybe that will continue. And certainly anytime I leave the city, if I go up to the little old farmhouse, we will do a lot of used book shopping, I would imagine, Mark and I. It's just hilarious. We get in a car and go eagerly hunting for books we do not need. If you've seen his library tour or mine, you know we do not need them. You'd swear when you saw the look on our face. We've become a pair of 8-year-olds. His wife might say we always are. If you saw the look on our face when we're about to launch on one of those adventures, you'd think, oh, these guys must be starved for books. No, it's just the opposite. It's really horrible. but I seem to be in the mood for it now, and as a result, I'm finding lots of stuff. So the second Tome around book tag couldn't have come at a better time. But that's it. That is my Tag Tuesday. I'll be back next Tuesday when I will once again have to forage in the scraps of a tag that no one's tagged me in because no one likes me. What I'd like in the intervening week would be somebody make an original tag and tag me, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I wouldn't want to complain, now would I? So I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.